Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Tech and Tales. I'm Veer, along with Ram Prakash, the Vice Chairperson at NISB, and we're glad to be joined by Milan Menezes. Milan is currently working as a technical solutions engineer at Google and has been an active IEEE member and the CS Society chairperson at NISB. He's an avid coder and a techie, so get your learning caps on as we dive into some specific tech topics. So Milan, just start off with like, how was your day and what are you up to these days?
Hi everyone. Hope you're doing well. And during this difficult time of COVID, I hope all of you are safe. And today, since it's a day off, I basically woke up late, just had my breakfast, and I'm here talking to you folks. And it's really exciting to talk to NISG folks after a long time, after all the history that we have had in college.
And what are you up to these days? Like, what are you doing? What are you learning? And since you might have some time off, so anything new?
Yeah. So basically, my work at Google involves, it's mainly focused around cloud and specifically cloud platform products. So I'm exploring a couple of solutions with these products, and yeah, basically, I'm trying to write a blog at this point. It's set up the backend and the framework for these things, and yeah, I basically have to write in content about the things that I do.
Okay. So like a personal blog, or are you writing via Google or?
It's a personal initiative. It's my own. So back in the time when I had to figure out a couple of things, there were no straight answers to a couple of things, and there were no straight ways of doing things. So yeah, all of those issues that I face, I didn't want others to face the same thing. So I thought it's better to write about those things so people can find
Okay,
it.
that's great. That's great. So we'll put up a link of your blog in the description so you get some traffic. So yeah, I am sure Ramprakash has some questions for you. So he was very eager to like. It's kind of his doubts also. So yeah, I think Ramprakash, you can go ahead with your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Veer. So, hello, Milan. It's probably the first time I'm meeting you. So, anyways, hi again. Uh, so, I had a lot of questions to ask actually. So, let's see how much we'll be able to cover. But I think rather than start off with a question, I've heard this thing pop up a lot. Like, admissions are going on, right? So, a lot of friends and neighbors and all are coming and like they're asking about a specific thing about the way computer science is in colleges, and it's almost become a way of ranking colleges almost, right? People are taking decisions on which college to choose based on this. And the thing is, like they keep mentioning coding culture, right? So I don't know, from a personal standpoint, I have no idea what it means. Like uh, I sort of assume some things, I would say it's about, I think it's about competitive programming or something. But I don't know. Have you heard of things like coding culture in colleges? And
Yeah. So basically what this would mean is that how you're taught a programming language and how you would use that programming language, and where would you apply that programming language. So if you see a lot of colleges here, it's sad to say that programming is kind of like memorized by people, and they just write that the code in their exam sheets and they're done with it for their marks. So that is not the actual way of doing things. So if you look at coding, I would say it's a universal skill. So in the current market, if you know how to code, if you know how to design algorithms and give solutions, the job market is huge. So you can work on different things. If you want to work in a company, you can work in a company. If you want to freelance, you can do that. And if you let's say if you want to build something on your own, make it open source. It's all open, right? So yeah, that's the current way of doing things. And in terms of the skill level also, right, compared to other things, if you're good at programming. When I say programming, I don't mean looking at someone's algorithm and just coding that. It's not like typing. This would mean designing a solution with the most efficient, let's say, algorithm with the best time and space complexities, using the right data structures to make sure that from end to end, let's say, if it's for a user product, the person using it should feel that it's an efficient product. So that would be the end-to-end culture. And in terms of college, you could say the way the college deals with coding, it might not be from the faculty's end itself. It might be the student clubs. I'm sure IEEE has IPL in college, so you run a couple of I think 2 to 3 competitions on competitive coding. So yeah, I think you can also see that the maximum participation from students would be for such events here. So yeah, it's quite good. If you look at these competitions also, right, you have like various kinds of people. There are people who are new to programming, who want to try things out, and you have people who are actually good at coding, who they've been doing it and they want to practice it here. And then in terms of languages also, you can see different kinds of languages that people use, and solutions also. Yeah, you'd be surprised at times when you see these solutions. You would not have thought of that solution. You would have had a different solution, but you might have the person would have written another solution which is of the same complexity or even better. And it's quite interesting. So I think that is what people talk about when they mean coding culture.
Okay. So I like that you mentioned how programming is taught and like in classrooms and everything. So I'll give you just one superpower. What if you had to change one thing about how it's taught, about how exams are taken, or what subjects we have, or things like that? What would you change? Like just one
Okay.
specific.
So if it was just one superpower, I would change the way how things are graded. So instead of the right solution, I mean the end result, I would grade people for their effort and the way they're doing things. So success should not actually be the end result. Let's say if it's your final year project, you shouldn't find a project that you would know that you will complete within a certain time within your safe boundaries. So the student should be able, or I mean, should be allowed to try new things, explore different technologies, and that effort should be, awarded.
Okay. So after that, I would just like to ask, okay, I'll start with like a, personal opinion. So not an opinion, I'm just bad at competitive programming. So I just want to ask, okay, so when I was starting off with web development and app development and things, competitive programming was not something I was like familiar with, and I was not really using it in the starting for building normal websites. But as the complexity grew, like it came into picture, and it was like a mind-opening thing that solving problems is actually helping me making better UI and better data structures. So I'm sure your complexity is way more than that. So how much do you use those concepts of competitive programming and algorithms in your day to day?
Um, so, well, I think I can answer this in two ways. First thing, regarding competitive coding itself. So, if you want to define it, it's not just about people competing with each other in order to solve something faster within the complexity range. But I would say it's a platform where you can practice what you've learned. So, if you learn something about algorithms or data structures, I mean, through academics or through your subject, what you would have learned is what that algorithm is and what it would solve. And in terms of data structures, you would have learned what a particular structure is, let's say arrays or graphs or trees, and where you would use it. But through competitive programming, I mean, your problem statements would be something related to the real world, right? Some situation would be picked up, and you'd be asked, to solve that. So there, that is where you'll try to apply the said algorithm and data structure to solve that. So in such situations, you'll understand, let's say, if when to use what kind of sorting algorithms or what kind of different standard algorithms for what situations. So at times you would have to modify your algorithm to arrive at the solution. So you would know which algorithm to pick up and how to modify that. So looking at a problem statement, you'll be you'll state, okay, if I do it in this way, I'll arrive at a particular intermediate solution. With that, I can do something else. So it's just that. It's just a way of putting into action what you've learned in terms of algorithms and data structures. In terms of application development, you actually don't need computer programming to reach the result. Let's say if you're talking about front-end technologies or anything else, you don't really need the best complexity there. But when you're building solutions for a very large scale solution for a very big market, these things matter because you can't have people waiting for 2 minutes in front of the screen to get a result, right? So having that snap response is quite important. In such situations, you would actually want to use the right complexity, put the right solution there. In such situations, let's say arriving at a solution is not the end result. Doing it in the most efficient way is the end result. So in such situations, you would need it.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So I'll try to make my applications more faster. So yeah, let's go ahead with the next question, I think.
Actually, yeah. So, going along the lines of web development, personally, this is an observation that I have made since I entered college. So, since first year, it's almost as if every computer science student, or even anybody who is based off computer science, and for that matter, even a few electronics people from my class, they immediately get gravitated towards web development. So I don't know. It sort of sounded bizarre to me. Like, I don't know. So why has web development suddenly gained like so much traction, or is it just my observation? Has it been there a long time? Because personally speaking, I think it's pretty hyped for what
Yeah.
it is.
So it's actually fascinating to look at web development. So in terms of why people easily get onto it, it's a, just write a simple HTML page. That's web development. So you don't need to learn a lot of things to do that. So let's talk about the web development. How it's emerged out in a couple of years. Back then, when it started, it was just the HTML script, right? Plain old HTML. You write some tags, you put in your data, and that's your web development. And the way to host it, probably you would find a hosting provider, and you would get, let's say, an FTP access to the server, and you copy those files, and you're done. It's hosted. This was back then. After that, I mean, this is way back then. Then yeah, you got the introduction of CSS for styling, and you got JavaScript for having some computation on the front end. And yeah, this was a static site. Then what happened? You moved towards your backend technologies. You started computing on your backend and making your sites dynamic. Let's say you start with PHP to compute something at the backend and serve HTML to the front end. So till this point, you could serve all of these things as, let's say, through just copying your files to another site. So it was mostly static files. Even PHP files, you could just move it behind a reverse proxy, Apache or Nginx, and you'd be done. Then what happened? People started having more frameworks for web development. You got things like, let's say, in Python, you have Flask, Django, and a couple of things, and you have Ruby on Rails, and things. So you got like different ways of having a different backend. And for the backend, you could not, host these things just by moving these files. You could not just have an FTP folder to host these files. You had to have a virtual machine, a virtual environment to run your files. That led to the introduction of the cloud technology itself, apart from your storage solutions. So this was how your compute side came up with virtual machines. Then what happened? Instead of computing everything on the back end, people thought, most part of it could be computed on the front end itself. And since you have JavaScript, you could do those things in the front end. And they started doing that. And writing these functions in JavaScript and maintaining these things was not so easy. And that led to the introduction of front end frameworks like React, Angular, and so many other frameworks, Vue.js and other things. So this is how the front end technologies came up. And then since you were doing all these in the front end with JavaScript, people wanted to try to do the same thing in the back end with JavaScript, and that led to the introduction of Node.js. So this is how the web technologies come up. And in the backend with JavaScript, you have Express.js and a couple of other servers that you run. And right now, it's kind of like you serve a front end with one of these frameworks. And at the backend, you have APIs rather than, let's say, serving everything from the backend. You do most of the computing on the front end, and then to get data, you either connect to a backend API with, let's say, a REST API or a GraphQL API on the backend, and then you get this data. And the data that is being served is computed at the backend. So that is how the evolution has been. And then in terms of people getting in, as I said, the ways of web development itself is, it's vast. You can do different things. You can get onto different stacks. Let's say if someone who knows nothing about like computer science, if the person's from a different branch, let's say EC or something else, they start off with HTML. I think they would require, a fair bit of 1 week. So 1 week of training would be more than sufficient, I would say, to get onto HTML. And after they explore that, they can try CSS and JavaScript, and then they can start with web development, and they're done. So with that, if they learn, let's say, PHP, which is not hard, and it probably be done within a month, all of these things, and they can call themselves full stack developers. So this is how it's been. So it's actually quite easy to start with web development. You don't need to know a lot, and as you go forward, you can change your technologies and learn more.
Yeah, and then I think what has fueled this even more is the introduction of containerization and Docker and stuff like that also. So yeah, I guess the crux is the ease of entry. Like there are very few entry barriers, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, to add on to that, back then, if I remember, back in my 11th or 12th grade, to actually put out and deploy something, it was really hard. You had to find, because you didn't want to pay, you're a student, so you had to find some free services. And all you could get to was, as I said, an FTP folder and nothing more. At this point, if you want to host some static files, you can just do it through GitHub pages. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to get any other service. And if you want to host an entire application, the backend itself, it's quite easy to get a PaaS platform for free. You can look at Heroku, or Red Hat has a couple of options. Even the cloud, you have so many PaaS and even infrastructure services which are free for a duration as a free trial. And there are some always free products as well. And students especially get free credits that they can use towards these things. So it's actually quite easy to start with something and actually put that into production, deploy that, and make it reach people at the stage for free.
Okay, so I like that you mentioned JavaScript. Like JavaScript is one of the only things I know like properly. But JavaScript is very weird. Like if you work with it a long time, it's very weird. So are there any funny JavaScript like bugs that you have encountered? I just wanted to ask. So one of my like most like brain wrecking things was back when I didn't know that JavaScript objects are copied over addresses and not value. I was editing some data and the master data was getting edited. And that was like, what is happening? And I was like way out of my expertise zone and stuff like that. And then I figured out after Googling and stuff. So is there any story like that with you or any funny bugs?
I don't remember any, and I don't work much with JavaScript, so I actually, don't have much with JavaScript. But I actually don't remember any funny story. It's been some time with any funny things happening.
So what do you work with generally? Like, what are your most interesting, like most, what are you most interested in?
I'm yeah, in terms of tech, I mean I'm a pure Python guy. So the moment I started learning Python, I was full-fledged into Python. So and in terms of the server itself, I run Flask servers. So also it's because of the ease of running these things. It's a micro server, so you would have to put it behind another reverse proxy. But yeah, the way of doing things and let's say hosting a REST API, this is how I do my tech. And then yeah, so GraphQL, I did try it with JavaScript back in my internship time. So we had, I mean, the backend was served through Express.js as a Graph QL API endpoint. So yeah, that's what I do with tech there. In Google, I mean my team provides advanced support to Google Cloud's enterprise customers. So I deal with the platform products. You know, there's the cloud, the app engine, the Cloud Run. We have the SQL servers, Cloud Build, and a couple of these platform solutions that Google Cloud has. So we work with these products here. In my house, what do I do? So yeah, I'm not much of an IoT guy, but I do have my Raspberry Pi running 24/7 here. So I run a couple of servers on that, not for automation purposes, like it doesn't turn off, I mean turn on or turn off any lights here, but to run something, I mean to run a task or a server there, I use my Raspberry Pi to, let's say, have a speed test server, to have um, a network attached storage to work on those files there, and a torrent engine, I mean a download engine, and a couple of things running on that. So that's a tech here.
All right, so that was very interesting to hear all of that about web development and such. So now I guess we would love to know about your journey to where you are right now, and what all steps you had to take, what all new things you learned in the process, uh, and basically how you had to pace yourself for the demands that were like asked for by Google. So yeah.
Yeah. So if I have to start with my college days itself, so I mean Google was a dream company. That was my aim, but I actually did not. I mean I did not know, or I did not plan, let's say, of joining Google at an early stage. I thought I couldn't reach there. I mean there's lots of things needed, and somewhere down the line I would try to cope up to the bar set by Google and join the company. But yeah, my journey started with like my first year itself. So since I was a tech enthusiast, I was learning things. So in my first year, that is where I actually learned PHP and the web development itself. So my free time went into web development in my first year, and then in terms of academics, you have I mean you're not into your branch in your first year. You have your physics and chem cycles, and you have, I mean, various subjects that you probably have no interest in, because it has nothing to do with your field of let's say computer science or electronics or whatever branch you take later. In your first year you have so many subjects, and getting free time also is it's quite hard in your first year, because you don't know how to manage your time, and you're right out of your let's say schooling, your PU. So till the point of let's say 10th or even 12th, your main aim would be to score more marks. So you would have no concept of, let's say, skills, or uh, you know getting new skills or developing your skills at that point. So all you would focus on is that whatever you would do in your free time doing something would be to get more marks and good grades. So that would be till you're 12th, and I can't blame that also, because you need marks in I mean what you learn, let's say, for competitive examinations, it's required to get into a good college. There's no other way around it in India. So it that would be, let's say, a student's goal at that point. and once they join, let's say in engineering, if I can take an example of computer science or information science, at that point, I mean, when you talk to people and understand things, right, you understand that it's not the marks. You need some decent marks, but you need to gain more skills, and those skills are what is going to help you later. Even if you want to, let's say, pursue higher education or work in a company or start something on your own, it's the skills that matter, not your marks. So yeah, first for me, first year went into web development and learning new things. Basically, I learned Python and a couple of other things. My second year, I spent, my time with competitive coding itself. So in my first year and second year, I participated in IPL itself in NISB. And I mean, whatever I did participate, I mean, my team was either the winners or the runner-ups. So that was till my second year. And in my second year, I changed my branch. So I joined college in the information science branch. And in my second year, I moved to the computer science branch. So my internals and other things got delayed by a month's time. So I had to learn new things and write those tests at a different time. So because of that, I had to miss one IPL. The day of the finals of IPL was by IPL, I mean IEEE programming thing. It's not the cricket one, just to clarify. So, yeah. So the finals of that, dates were released at the beginning itself. So I knew I would miss the finals because of my test. So I went towards volunteering to frame the questions for IPL. So so Tejas was the vice chair at that time, and he was taking care of IPL. So I went with him, and I was kind of like the organizing team for IPL. So I was framing questions more. I think half of those questions were framed by me, and that's where I started framing these questions. And yeah, that kind of continued for the rest of my second year in terms of computer coding. And in terms of development, I kind of I started Android development at that point because a couple of hackathons that we attended. So yeah, at that point of time, we couldn't find any problem that we could solve through, let's say, web development at that time that we could build in a day's time. So looking at an application development standpoint, it kind of felt easier. I mean, you could find a lot of problems that you could fix through an app, and you could build that. I mean, at least a prototype within a day. So because of that, I started building the application. And throughout these 2 years, I kind of built a good network with people within college and through IEEE professionals in Bangalore section as well by attending the events hosted by Bangalore section. And yeah, in my third year, I was selected to be the chairperson of Computer Society. So kind of most part of my free time went into organizing events and giving back to the Computer Society members for the money that they paid. So, moving them towards a tech background. So, giving them good workshops and organizing these events. And I think in my time, yeah. So we also hosted a state level, conference. It's called All Karnataka Computer Society Congress in IEEE. So yeah, I chaired that event as well. So we organized these things, and my time went in that. So yeah, post that it was mostly learning new technologies and yeah, staying in touch with people, networking with folks, and yeah, that was what I did for the first 3 years. And I was placed through college itself. I was interning at a different. I was interning in Bangalore and in a startup during my placements, and the day before my placements, I came back to Mysore and I attended this, and I was placed in a good company. It was a well-paying company. Then yeah, in my fourth year, I started working. After my fourth year, I started working in the company. The problem was that what I was company aligning with my interests. So if you, nobody tells you about the companies. So if I have to put it in like small words, there are different kinds of companies. You have companies like IT services companies, which basically provides services to different companies. So if company A wants a product and company B is an IT service company. A asks the company B, and company B will take the requirements, develop that solution, and give it to company A. This is an IT service company. Then you have, let's say, a product company which would build a product and they will sell that product. So you can look at a lot of products that let's say businesses use or people use. So these things are built by these product companies. The third would be the company which has a main business, and they would have an IT wing which would support that business. So that business might be oil, or let's say shopping or different things, and IT would basically give them support. So I was placed in such a company, and what we were doing was providing support. When I say support, the company, I mean, IT wing would mostly have operation jobs and not much of tech. So you don't have development and things. It's there, but it's. I mean, number of roles are very low. So the field that I was put into was cybersecurity. So I was working with risk and control of data moving between applications there. So I kind of did not, feel, I mean, good about it. And in simple terms, I was not happy with my job. So I was looking for other options in the first year itself with working. And I think after a couple of months, Google reached out to me, and they said, "So we're hiring for this role here, and would you be interested?" So I responded with it, and yeah, it started off with an online test, and then there was a telephonic interview, and then I was called in for the on-site interviews. Post that, so the hiring process in Google is quite good. So you have the people interviewing you would be people from the same role. So you can ask them anything. You can ask them how your work is or how a day-to-day activity would look like and how things are. Then your recruiter is also like very friendly to you. So if I have to hypothetically put the situation where your interviewer is on one side and you are on the other side, your recruiter is towards you. So your recruiter would guide you and like give you tips on like how you should answer and what you should focus on and all of these things. So it was quite good. So my recruiter, I mean, I felt really good about the recruiter because um, uh, if you look at the interviews itself, if a company, I mean, calls you for on-site interviews, the company takes care of most of the expenses. So your travel, if you're from a different location, your flights, your stay in a hotel, and I mean, your return also would be taken care of by the company itself. So from the moment I stepped inside the Google office, my recruiter was with me most of the times. So even for breakfast, it took me to breakfast, and lunch also it took me to lunch. And food at Google is awesome. So yeah, after my interview was done, also I mean he dropped me off to the elevator. So it was like the culture is it's really great. So that was the experience there. And your interviewers, the questions that they ask are more focused towards the role and your skill set. They wouldn't ask you something that you have no idea about. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of testing your ability, testing your skills itself. So it's like that. It's great. And after all of this process, you have another independent body called the hiring committee, which would pick up all the feedback given by your interviewers and your recruiter, and they make the final decision on hiring. So that was the whole process at Google. But then, yeah, everything went well, and I'm actually happy. Things went really great, and at each step of the process, I was happy about everything. So there's no regrets, there's no issues on any part of it. And for people, yeah, and I think you also asked about like what people should do to reach this phase. So I think I have just one suggestion. In the second year, after the first year, and after getting into, let's say, the college and getting into the system, the second year, the 5 days a week, right? They can spend at least 1 hour every day on either computer programming or application development. When I say application development, it might be web development or mobile applications. So they can spend that time on learning things or building things. So they don't have to spend their weekends on it. They don't have to, let's say, do this during their internals or their exam time. But every other time, every day, if they just spend 1 hour on doing these things, they'd be great, because people don't do that. People don't stay in touch with these things. They do something and they forget about it. So just doing this much in your second year and half of your third year, you can apply to very good companies for internships, or post your third year, you could actually apply for good jobs and you can show these things. They should have a good resume. They should have a good a GitHub profile. So let's say mentioning your GitHub links for your projects on your resume also adds value, because people can actually go and see what the person's contributed. There are many times where people would get code, let's say the whole project from some other place, and they show that project on GitHub. They would basically have one commit, and it would be all of these files, or it would be a fork of someone else's repository with no modifications at all. So yeah, all of these things you can find on GitHub. And even companies, mostly startups, are moving towards hiring from hackathons, and by looking at your GitHub itself. That's how I actually got my internship. So I interned in a startup. So basically, they took the call of calling me based on my GitHub profile. And then after our telephonic interview, I was given a task to check if I was able to meet their expectations. I completed the task of build a small prototype of sorts, and then I was given the offer. So that was my internship at a startup environment, and then and that's how things have been. So my suggestion to people would be to let's say build the skills. I understand people when they, I mean, at least from their parents' standpoint, they would have told them, let's say, 10th standard concentrate well, and then 12th standard concentrate well. Then when you're in engineering, it kind of goes with the flow. They don't, I mean, you don't get much information about what to do and what not to do. So I would say, I wouldn't ask people to, let's say, not enjoy their time. They can do whatever they want, but if they spend, let's say, 1 hour every day in the second year, or even if that is not possible, they could do it on alternate days, and build it. So people, what they would do is that they would look at the left side and right side, the classmates, and they're like, okay, I'm at the same level as my classmates, or I'm better than my classmates, and we saturated. So the problem with that is that there are a lot of people out there who are really, really good, and those are the people that you should try to reach to that level, or do something even better. So being saturated within your college itself is not good, because people are not learning, or have skills to their potential. They have a lot of potential, because let's face it, people are in NIE is a very good college, and they have to get a very good rank to get into NIE as well. And getting into college also, placement, people easily get placed. It's not that hard at all. But to find the right job, and the right role, which syncs with your interests, it's hard. It's not that easy to get a good job. No, not all great companies come to NIE. You have a bunch of good companies, and then you have these other, let's say, Masako companies, but the culture might not be as great as the top companies. So to get into those companies, people have to work hard. So they have to work smart and work hard. So that is just my suggestion to people, because it's really hard to do that every day. You lose that determination. But at least when you try to do that, and you try to do for most of the days, you'd be a lot better than your classmates, or the people that you were comparing to before. So it's just my suggestion on that.
Okay, that sounds amazing. So yeah, thank you for that insight. Just one thing that caught my attention, like that had me just thinking about it. You said that you got an invite from Google that for the job interview and everything. So what do you think led them to like reaching, like finding you and reaching out to you? So was it
So
your GitHub or open source, or what was it exactly?
at the time, I had applied to a lot of companies. So, at Google, and I think a couple of other companies, when you apply and your profile does not match it, they will still keep your profile there. Your all of your data would still be there, and when another role comes up or another opening comes up, if your skills and your resume matches, they would reach out to you. So I don't really remember when I applied to Google. It was some time back, and I had applied to a lot of companies at the time as well. So that's how they reach. And typically, the acceptance rate at Google is 0.2%. So it is quite low. But I mean, it all depends on how things go. You have to find the right role get in, and then yeah, in a typical scenario, not just in one company, in most of the companies, uh, your recruiter only looks at your resume for 2 seconds. So in those 2 seconds, they decide whether to read the whole thing or to move to the next resume. So it's just that you have to have a good resume and a good LinkedIn profile and a good GitHub account. So based on the things that you write, they would look at these different things, and then they make a call whether to move ahead with the application. So this is just the resume phase. Once you're through this, then you can actually use your skills. So up till the resume point, it's just presenting what you know. So once you're through with that, then you can actually use your skills and things. So the tests and other things, you can use your knowledge to do that, and your interviews you can actually showcase and talk to your interviewers about what you're good at and what you want to do.
Okay. So you're saying that open source like plays a large role in having a good first impression of sorts, right? Like it's a good channel to get what you know across. So have you gotten your feet wet in open source of late? Because Hacktoberfest is coming up, and a lot of things are going on. So anything you have to say
Yeah.
about your open source experience?
So I've not, specifically contributed to any open source project, but most of my projects are open source. So I had a license and I make it open source for people to use it. I write good documentations as well. I write how people can install it, how they can run the dev environment, and how they can host it as well. But in terms of like India's open source involvement, right? So it's growing. It's not, there yet, but like people are getting into it. And the reason why this is important is because, let's say, I take a couple of scenarios here. One thing would be it's a good initiative. I mean, it looks good when people volunteer and contribute to something that would help a lot of people. This is one thing that, let's say, companies can look at. So a lot of times people wouldn't even, I mean, they wouldn't know if a candidate is good enough or not, or if they are actually having good skills, or if they've built something. But contribution to these things would mean that they've understood what the project is and they've contributed towards this project. And let's say if I have to take a scenario, back in my fourth year or third year, I don't really remember properly. There were floods in Kerala, so situation was really bad. And then one person decided to make a website to provide all information related to these things, so that people, if they need, let's say, contact phone numbers or any other information, it should be easier for them to get the regional numbers and contact information. So this person was from IEEE itself. He was a student. I don't actually don't. It's my mistake. I don't remember his name. So he built a Django site and he made it open source, and a lot of people contributed to it. And then what happened? The government actually hosted this. So it was under the banner of the developer, and after that, the government actually, I think they sponsored it as well. But yeah, even Amazon sponsored it, as far as I know. So this helped a lot of people. So at least during flood times, you really wouldn't know whom to contact, or if you want something, it's really hard, because I mean, most of the time your network won't be there, so you have to go to some location to find some network and try to connect, and it's hard to find the right resources at the time. So if you just have one place where you can find all of these things and get help, it's really good. This is one really good initiative that was made by a student. So yeah, this is one situation that I like. And then, I mean, last week itself, I was looking at, let's say, React templates for a portfolio website. Then I came across one person who had made an open source project on that. Then I just like visited his website and checked what he was doing. And I was actually, really impressed by the person. So he had made the whole site open source so people could, use that repo. And then in terms of his contributions, he had a page where he had listed all of his pull requests shown there. So I mean, it was fetched from GitHub. But then looking at it, I was like, okay, this guy is in the second year of college and he's doing so much. So it is really really good because I've also seen people in the third or fourth year who, I mean, computer science, who find it really hard to write a program to compute prime numbers. To compare to all of these things, this person, it's quite good. So from a hiring standpoint, if I think even if it was me and if I'm looking at this person, I'd be really impressed. So that's how open source is. And also from company standpoint, right? So at least like most of the companies have a lot of tools and a lot of technologies that are internal. So I can speak, I mean, here in my company right now, tech is amazing. So you have so many things that the world still does not know about. And it's only when the company makes it open source that people try to understand what things are and they use it. You can take the example of Kubernetes itself. So once it came out and it was open source, after that, so many companies and so many people started using it. And then, yeah, there were like hackathons and dev fests for just Kubernetes itself. So it's just that. Once it's open source, a lot of people get to know about it and they try to improvise on it. And collectively building something is always better than building it with one view by one person or a couple of people.
So, one last question. I think that will be very helpful for our audience. What are the 5 things that you would like people to try? So, like, I'm a complete beginner, I don't know anything about CS, and I want to find the passion that you're talking about. So, what are the 5 things that I should try as a beginner?
Okay. As a beginner, I mean, to get into some advanced stuff, you would first need to get the basics right. So I would say, understand, at least be confident in one programming language. So if you are quite new, it's good to start with some easy to learn languages. You could start with Python or whatever language. You could start with JavaScript. There, JavaScript. So yeah, get through one programming language, then you could try things like web development or application development. So if you're learning things, let's say like in web development itself, you're doing React or what else are there? Yeah, there's a lot of web technologies where you can use the native mode to have cross-platform development. You could use Ionic, you could use React Native, or you could use Flutter. So you'll have one code base, and it would mostly be JavaScript, if not a different language. And you could have your one code base and have applications in different platforms. So this is one thing. Or you could do native development, application development for mobile phones, or you could try things in IoT, having different sensors and different devices and writing code that would sync them and solve some issue. Or people who could try cloud itself, cloud technologies. So this would more towards, let's say, development operations, so DevOps roles, where you would have an automated system where one you have a build system, people write code, and when they execute this build system, things are built. So your code is built into production, and then it is deployed, it is tested, and it's deployed somewhere. So you could explore these things. In cloud, you could look at virtualization, containerization, and then there are different things that. So I think in cloud, I mean, the basic thing would be the virtualization itself, how an hypervisor works and how a virtual machine is given to you. Then you could move towards Dockers, towards containerization. You could look towards how things are built. So it's quite different, right? How you natively, in general, build things, and how you build things to host it in the cloud, and how you build things to put it in a container. The reasons why they containerize things and have these things. It's quite different. None of these things are taught in college. So you could try exploring these things. Um, what other options do you have after this? You could look at cybersecurity if you're interested towards cryptography and the security aspects of this. So you could try the cybersecurity itself. You could look at algorithms designed for cryptography, and you could look at let's say SSL certificates and how these things work, and what better you could do RSA algorithm itself, and where all it's used, and what better things that you could do with these things. Apart from these things, if you're let's say interested at an earlier stage, you would think hacking is good and stuff. So if you're interested at like hacking and stuff, you could look at those options as well. You could try Kali Linux and explore things, try to do different things there. So yeah, my suggestion would be know everything, at least basics of these things. I missed out machine learning. Machine learning is huge. I'm not really into machine learning, but the opportunities and the potential of machine learning is absolutely huge. So if you're into machine learning and if you're good at that, at least at this age, everything runs on machine learning. So in terms of opportunities and in terms of research, there's like great potential in machine learning. So people could try that out. Yeah, there are different things. You could try game development, you could try machine learning or deep learning, or you could build your own chatbot. You can actually build the serving back end of that chatbot, the whole machine learning model. So opportunities are huge. It's just that you have to find your right passion, and this is the right time that people can do it. And it's just that you should have at least a fair bit of knowledge of everything, and we should be good at one or two things. So just knowing one thing and knowing nothing else makes no sense, because you have to work with other things as well. And just knowing something of everything is also not useful. You should be good at something. Should be passionate about something. So yeah, it's just that people think. There are few people who would think that the more programming languages that they know, it's good. It's actually not. So you should know the ins and outs of one language. You should be very comfortable with one language. Let's say for computer programming or application development, if somebody throws a problem at you, you should know how to solve that. You should at least have a mind mapping of what you could do with your language. So that is one understanding. And then with that, how you integrate that with other things. So a lot of things you cannot do with one thing. So if I know Python, I can't do, let's say, front end development. I can't write Python code in my front end, right? So I should at least have a fair bit of idea of how JavaScript works and things. So it's just that you should have a holistic view of everything, and that involves your operating systems, your databases, your algorithms, data structures, networking, the most important thing. But yeah, you should be good at one thing, and concentrate on academics. Don't lose grades. Have decent grades. Have good grades itself, but just don't depend on your grades. Grades are good, but grades are not what gets you through your life. So it's the skills that you get. So build a good network. Have a good LinkedIn resume, and whatever things that you do, it's good to post those. It's not good to have a blank profile. And connect with the right people. Reach out to them, and connect with the alumni as well. So if people reach out to their alumni, you can just say, "Hey, from NIE, I found your profile on LinkedIn, or I got it from some person. I just wanted to say hi, and I'm looking for some guidance on this." It'll never get turned down. So people, even if they're busy, they'll respond back. But there's no attitude of, let's say, people. Your ex-cohort, or let's say alumni of NIE telling that I'm busy, don't contact me or anything. So yeah, always reach out to people. It's always good to have a good network. So if you're stuck somewhere, or if you need, let's say, referrals in companies, you can always reach out to people, and they will be more than happy. So what's the worst thing that could happen? So you'll get a rejection message. There's nothing else, and that rarely happens. So yeah, there's no harm in trying. Even I had this concept where, let's say, if I have to contact some person, that person would be working, and they would have very small, windows of free time, and it's not good to book that time of theirs and stuff. But that's not the case. People, if they're busy, they will find another time and get back to you. So if people are having that conception, and I'm giving you an open invitation, you can contact me anytime. I might be busy, but I'll get back to you when I'm free.
Yeah, I kind of had that conception also for like for people who are working at startups and all those things. Like it's a very busy and a very happening life. So I was like, okay, why would they come and sit with us? But then, yeah, I saw a lot of people are willing to share what they learned and kind of their story, and everybody like loves a platform they can uh, talk to people, like reach out to the community and things like that. Yeah, so I believe this has been really great. I have learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience will learn a lot through these sessions. I'm really sorry that we'll have to end it right now. And so thank you everyone for joining. See you guys at the next episode of Tech and Tales.